Hey everyone, this is Eric at FMLS, and this is going to be just kind of a brief summary video of the Matrix Concepts webinar. In it, we're going to talk about Market Watch, hot sheets, and stats. So hot sheets and Market Watch are, as I like to say, two sides of the same coin. You'll see what I'm talking about when we get there briefly. We'll be, of course, able to customize each of those widgets using criteria and map. We'll be doing searches with those. It's kind of intrinsic to why you would be using them. And then lastly, we'll talk about the stats tab in Matrix, how you might run that, things that you want to consider, why you would use it, how it's going to work for you, that kind of stuff. So if I pop over to my live login here to Matrix, I'm already in Matrix, you'll see that I have the tabs open that I'm going to be talking about. So on the left, I've got my stats. I might kind of move that down here. I'll talk about that last because I'm going to hit stats last. Before then, I want to talk about hot sheets and Market Watch. So let's start with hot sheets. Now, before I go any further, I do want to remind you that this is going to be kind of a shortened, condensed version of the live webinar that I might lead during any given month. I'm not necessarily going to be cutting out any content, so don't feel like there should be extra that you would learn along the way. But given that this is something that I can record and you can watch at your own speed, it's kind of built in that I'm obviously not going to be available to you to ask questions during the content. So that type of natural duration of asking questions we're not going to have. And also, of course, you can pause this video at any time. So if I'm just kind of flipping in some criteria that we might want to be looking at in any of these given widgets, and that's kind of what I'm doing, pause the video and put in your own criteria, see how it works for you. Okay, so given the nature of how you can watch a YouTube video, it's going to be probably just a little shorter. All right, so on the Hot Sheets widget, as I mentioned, what we see here are the standard property categories. So we have what's called cross property, residential, commercial sale, land, residential income, which is your duplexes to quadruplexes, and then residential lease, your rentals. So below there, we see a customize link. We're going to use that shortly. And to the right, in the lower right corner of that Hot Sheets widget, you have kind of a days back type of functionality to it. So if I, for instance, pick 3 days, I'm seeing the last 3 days on the market in whatever I'm going to choose here in a moment. 7 days back, what's happened today? What's happened over the last 24-hour period? What's happened in this session that I've been logged in? If I run my hot sheets multiple times while I'm logged into a session, what's new since the last time I ran it? And then we have a custom days back, if you will. So the first thing to know, I'm not going to necessarily click custom, but I will tell you that custom either can go 30 days back. All right, so naturally in this window, I have 3 days, 7 days, right? I have some time periods. Custom can go either up to 30 days back, or you can use timestamps if it's today. So let's just say it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon right now when you're watching this video, and you wanted to specifically know, for whatever reason, what happened between 8:30 and 9:12. today. As long as it was today, you could use that custom choice and put in those time frames. All right. If it's yesterday and beyond, it can only use the date, not the timestamps. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, it only goes back to 30 days. All right. Things beyond 30 days ago aren't very hot now, are they? Remember that this is called the hot sheet. What's going on right now? If you want to look at more than 30 days in the past, you're going to do just a normal search, right? Under your search tab up at the top, find your property categories, see what happened last December, or something like that. All right. So as I have this hot sheet set right now, I'm going to leave it to today. Okay. And so without customizing it, I just want you to see how it works. Okay, so with no customization yet, what you should understand, what I want you to know, is that when we are not customizing it, we're seeing the entire FMLS database. Okay, so since midnight, right, once the calendar switched over to today, if I click residential, here's what's happened since midnight. In the upper left corner, I can see that there's been 1,217 what are called change types. Okay, this is the new field. Okay, so this is kind of advanced. If you're not familiar with Matrix yet, I would encourage you to stop and look at the Matrix Mechanics webinar. Go to the Matrix Basics class, okay? Because these concepts, the whole reason it's called Matrix Concepts is that it's a little more advanced, okay? So yeah, since midnight, there's been 1,217 changes. In this column, we can see that changes are considered, for instance, price decreases. Here's one that was sold. We have a new listing here. There's one that's come back on the market. All right, so we can see, if I just kind of flip us back to the home tab here, what the hot sheet shows us is what's happening, right? So let me give you two ideas that I frequently hear agents use the hot sheets for. All right. The first example I'll give you is, let's just say, consider, if you will, the average client of yours. The average client might work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, somewhere in there. They've got a job, they've got a shift that they work. Takes them an hour to get to work and back. Hey, it's Atlanta. We all have to face the traffic. So then they come home, they're hungry, they're going to eat some dinner, relax for a minute, and then they open your emails that you're sending them properties for, okay? Excuse me. At that point, especially in any given market, especially the spring and summer markets, especially, properties go pretty fast. If a property comes on the market at 9 a.m., by 4 in the afternoon, there might already be 2 offers on that place, okay? Excuse me. So if you have a client who you want to see things faster, you can log into Matrix, see this hot sheet, and say, what's happening right now? Ooh, in the last 20 minutes, this property came on. It's your dream house. Let me send this to you right now faster than you might see it, that you normally would around 8 o'clock tonight or something, because you need to see this right now, right? So it gives you as an agent a way to really keep on top of what's happening in your client's kind of criteria. The other way, the second way I would mention that agents use hot sheets, it's a thing that you might find expired listings and try to contact that homeowner and say, hey, I saw you had I see you had a listing on the market. It expired. That's horrible. Let me take a swing at it, right? So you could kind of browse the want ads in a way, looking for expired listings, and maybe market to those. Okay. So just with those two basic thoughts, I'm sure that others can come up with reasons why they might use hot sheets. But with just those two basic thoughts, let's take a look at actually customizing these hot sheets. So when I click customize on the hot sheet widget, we come to what I like to call the middle screen. Okay, so that implies, of course, that we have that top screen that we just left where we run the hot sheet. This one is where we decide how to handle our hot sheets. And then we're going to be able to go one screen deeper when we're editing our hot sheets. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually start with editing a hot sheet. So if I go over here in the list and I click residential, for instance, remember when we weren't using custom criteria, we were looking at the entirety of the FMLS database. So most of the time, that's not very helpful to you, right? You don't care about what happens way on the other side of the county from where you're in, or 3 counties over, right, or something like that. So let's go ahead and talk about editing this residential hot sheet. So if I highlight residential on the left here, and then over to the right in my buttons, I'm going to tell you what all these buttons do. But for right now, I'll click Edit Criteria. Check it out. It basically takes me to a standard search screen. So I might say, for instance, I'm interested in homes that are 400 to $600,000 that generally are in the 4 to 5 bedroom range. They've got 2 to 3 bathrooms, right? You're just kind of describing your bread and butter listings, for instance. All right, things that you normally are interested in seeing. And maybe not only do I have this price range and these type of characteristics that I'm looking for, also notice that at the bottom, I can add additional fields. So you see down here I have pool features. Maybe I only want to see houses with pools. So for me to do that, I'm going to click none and then put my dot next to not. So I'm looking for listings that do not indicate that they have no pool, right? So if you need to think about that for a second, again, remember you can always pause this video if I just kind of threw you a curveball there, okay? But you can add and remove properties, right? Just like you can in your regular search. And also, just like you can in your regular search, I can click map search, the link up here kind of toward the top in the center, come to the map, and I can maybe draw a radius over on the right side here. I'll just click draw radius. And let's say I'm going to look around the Sandy Springs area within about 4 miles of kind of where FMLS is, so to speak. When I click OK, this comes back, right? I see map area selected, letting me know that it did include that shape that I just drew. Now, the one field here that's a little different that probably you haven't seen yet, over on the left, we have change type. So if you recall from 5 minutes ago or so, when I was showing you what that hot sheet did, we saw those different change types like new listing, back on market, expired, price decrease, price increase. So maybe, for instance, I don't want to see, I'll give you an example. I don't want to see price increases. Normally, when there's a price increase, it's because somebody's just correcting an error when they list the property. They forgot to put in an extra zero, or they missed a number, something like that happened in the price. So I don't really care about those. Maybe what I really care about are new listings, back on market, and I want to also see closed, things that are selling in this particular part of town, right? So you notice, you don't have the benefit of seeing how I'm doing something on my keyboard, but in case I just threw you yet another curveball by clicking multiple items in this list, you're going to hold down your control key if you're on a PC or your command key if you're on a Mac. And with one of those buttons held down, like I said, it depends on whether you're a Mac or a PC. One more time, on a Mac it's command, on a PC it's control. Hold that down and click on as many of these items as you want, and it will select those multiple things. So let's just say this is what I'm running with. I want 4 to 5 bedrooms in that price point, that many bathrooms in that about 4 miles I think I drew around where FMLS is headquartered. I'm only interested in new listings, back on market, closed. Now when I click save at the bottom, I come back to that middle screen and I've now changed residential to that criteria. So if I demonstrate just real quickly, I'll click done at the bottom to come back to my home page. And now if I click residential, now, actually nothing happened in that price range in that area. So let me actually go to maybe 7 days back. Let's open that up a bit more. I've had one property that was sold in that price point, so $425, in that bed bath range that's within that map location of where I'm at, kind of up in the corner here in Dunwoody. All right. So I just went back to home. Okay. So that's great, but let's consider editing this some more, because residential I have to rely on my memory. And I'll tell you, sometimes I feel like a goldfish. I don't know what my name was this morning. So leaving this to my brain to remember that residential is my $400,000 to $600,000 in this area with this bed and bath kind of range doesn't do me much good. So if I click customize one more time and I highlight that residential, because this is the one that I want to edit, well, rather than editing the criteria, which I did a moment ago, now what I want to do right above there is rename. So if I click rename, this screen comes up. Just for right now, I'm going to tell you ignore the top box. I'll come back and tell you about that in a minute. But the second box where it says name, is the one that I want to change. So I might change this to single family homes around work, 400 to 600, 4 to 5/3, whatever the case may be, right? You just have to give yourself enough details to kind of know what that is. So now when I click save, it's renamed residential to that description. And now when I click done, and I'm kind of back when I first opened Matrix, I'm on the home screen. Now I know exactly which hot sheet I'm looking at. And again, when I click on this, notice that it takes me to a regular grid. So if I want to email this to somebody, I can click on it, click email down at the bottom, print. I can take it into a cloud CMA. All of my choices in what's called the button bar below those results are offered to me because this is yet another grid with property data in it. Every grid that has property data in it gets the same button bars at the bottom of that grid. So it kind of becomes a familiar array of options at that point. So that's kind of in general what the hot sheets does, how you can customize it. But I'm going to click customize once more because there's more buttons over here to the right that I haven't presented yet. And I do want to present you a full explanation of everything here. So when I come to this screen, it's going to highlight the top one here, which is cross property. Over to the right, I've got a grayed out button. If you can make that out, you might see that it says move up. So you might understand, of course, that the reason it's grayed out is because cross property is already at the top of the list. Notice that the second button is move down. If I actually click on the bottom one, now move down grays out, right? Pretty self-explanatory. So the thing that I would tell you, the only other thing that I would tell you about moving these around and putting them in whatever order you want, the system is not going to treat the hot sheets that you've got here in any particular way based on how they're sorted. So sorting your hot sheets is thoroughly an aesthetic option. If you want to put it in alphabetical order, if that's the way you want to roll, go for it. If you want to put the most important one at the top and then as they get less important, put them down, that's fine. However you'd like to run with that. The third button down is add. So we can add extra hot sheets. All right. So the limit, the number that you need to know is 10. You can have up to 10 hot sheets. So we start with 6, which are our different property categories. Now I've already changed residential to the description of what I did. If I want to make another residential, maybe I'm also interested in homes, I don't know, over in Powder Springs. I like Powder Springs, whatever. Let's just look over there. So if I want to add a new hot sheet, I'm going to click add. This screen comes back up. We kind of saw this one a little while ago when I told you to ignore the top box. What the top box does is it says, what kind of properties do you want to see? Let's say I'm most interested in residential properties for sale in Powder Springs. So I'm going to choose residential, and then in my name, I might put Powder Springs. Maybe I'm only interested in what's coming on the market. I want to keep an eye on what's actives. Right? So Powder Spring actives, I'll click save. So now has appended to the list Powder Springs actives. Now, did I feed that criteria to the hot sheet? No, not yet. So now I have to click edit criteria. So I would click edit criteria. I would do new listings and back on market. Put my check mark next to detached if it was just single family homes, or I could put a check next to condos as well. Okay. And then in my county, I might do Cobb, and then city, Powder Springs. Right. And so again, just make the criteria match whatever you're interested in. So when I click save, and now if I click done once more, there we go. Powder Springs active, 7 days back. We actually have 24 listings in Powder Springs that are either brand new or are back on the market. Okay. So just to finish up, all right, rename we've already seen. Edit criteria we've now used at least twice. Okay. Reset criteria. So if you see reset criteria, it means you're already using custom criteria. Just like move up is grayed out because right now I'm on cross property, which is at the top of my list. If reset criteria were grayed out, it would tell me that I'm already using the system default. So for instance, I go to land, you'll see reset criteria now is grayed out. Okay, so that tells me I'm using the system default. I don't need to reset it. So if you see cross property and you're like, wait, why is this lit up? You can click edit criteria to see what custom criteria you're using. Lastly, you see delete down there. So for instance, maybe I'm a residential agent. I don't necessarily do land listings. I'm not necessarily interested in land listings. Do I need land listings to be here? No, you don't. All right. So don't think that even though those 6 default property categories are written in stone, those are the property categories, it doesn't mean you have to have one here. So I can click delete with land selected. It's going to say, are you sure? I'm going to click OK. And now land is gone. So that can free up another slot, because remember, you only have 10 before add is going to gray out. So literally they could all 10 be different, unique residential hot sheets. Okay. So I've demonstrated 2 hot sheets, Powder Springs Actives and the single family home spreadsheet, or I'm sorry, hot sheet around work. But again, one more thought. Remember, if you have a client and maybe it's your client's search that you always want to keep track of, you've got that Monopoly, Mr. Monopoly Moneybags guy from the game who's got real deep pockets. That person has like $3 million cash just lying around his sofa, and he's hired you as his agent. You might want to take extra close attention to that person's search. Go ahead and make a search for your hot sheet that matches, that mirrors the criteria that the client has given you, that Matrix is already sending stuff out. Because again, if you copy that into your hot sheet, when you come into Matrix at any given time, you can run that hot sheet. And yeah, maybe at 11 o'clock, he's busy with the stock market, and you can click into that, see that something just came on the market 12 minutes ago, and send it to him before you miss out on that $4 million mansion he wants to buy, right? So just some ideas how the hot sheets works, okay? Over to the right, we have Market Watch, all right? As I mentioned earlier, Market Watch and hot sheets, I like to refer to as two sides of the same coin. So for instance, in the Market Watch, what you're seeing here is new listing, back on market, price decrease, increase, pending, etc. These are all those list change types or last change types, right? So this is why it's two sides of the same coin. This is just a different way at looking at the data. Okay, so for instance, down at the bottom, I choose what category I'm interested in. So if I'm interested in residential, and over to the right, we have our days back type of function. Notice that we are just a little more limited in the Market Watch widget with our time frame than we are over in the hot sheet. Okay, so again, if I have today and residential selected, I'm looking by default at the entire FMLS system. So we've had 189 new listings today. We've had 236 price decreases. There's 36 expireds. Okay. So this is just what I can see at a given time. Now these bars over to the right, the colors mean nothing. I know that you're probably used to seeing, red is for sold, green is for active, orange is for pending. Well, green is for listing, but it's a little different green, or new listing. Pending is this orange, but look at sold. Sold is blue. Don't pay any attention to these colors. They don't really have any direct bearing on anything. The only thing that these little bars are going to do, based on the length, you'll see the length does represent. So today, since midnight, 353 pendings is the largest number of all of these. Therefore, it's the lengthiest bar. Okay, so length just will dictate how many numbers, right? Or numbers will dictate length. All right. So we had 10 hot sheets that you could totally name whatever you wanted to name them. Right? Real big on customizing. In the Market Watch widget, you cannot rename these. and you cannot add any more. So you get 6 Market Watch widgets and 10 hot sheets for a grand total of 16 searches here on your desktop or on your dashboard. But we can customize the criteria. Okay, so remember that middle screen, quote unquote, as I called it over on the hot sheets widget. We don't have that here. How you're going to kind of feed the criteria that you're interested in. You're going to choose that particular property category. So I'll leave it on residential. I'm going to click customize, and it's going to take me right to my search where I can say, okay, for my residential, I am interested in, let's just kind of keep it open. I'm going to say Fulton County. Maybe Sandy Springs. Okay, so Fulton, Sandy Springs, click save. So you see in the parentheses here, now that I've clicked save and I've come back to the matrix dashboard, these numbers are a lot fewer, right? 2 new listings, 1 back on market. Okay, so since today in Sandy Springs, I've got 2 new listings. Okay, great. If I click on them, here they are. Okay, so a benefit of the Market Watch widget is that sometimes, especially when you're interested in more than just a couple change types, right? Remember the one that I did a little while ago was new listings back on market and sold, and it put them all in the same grid. Well, if you're looking at a particularly hot part of town with a lot of listings and movement in it, you can get a lot of matches. So sometimes it's easier to look at fewer matches at a time and kind of digest that and then work into a different part of the market or a different reasoning or something. So when I clicked on that new listing, here they are. Here's the 2. Another nice thing about the Market Watch widget is I don't have to go back to the Home tab to kind of look at something else I might want to look at. Above my grid, notice it says Market Watch, it says new listing, and I've got this little down arrow that's blue. If I click that down arrow, it brings up my Market Watch widget, and I can say, okay, well, let's now look at the one that's back on market. Right, here it is. Okay, so you can kind of quickly use this little drop down at the top of your grid to navigate to another Market Watch. Right, I can choose a different category, or I can just choose a different status type up here at different days back. Maybe now let's look at 7 days back in Sandy Springs, right? And again, remember that if I check off a particular match, all of my button bar choices toward the bottom are the same. Okay, so I don't think Market Watch probably needs a lot more explanation. Again, it's really just, like I said, an opposite side of the coin from hot sheets. So just to kind of wrap that up, again, just remember that you cannot alter the number or the naming convention of your Market Watch categories. Also notice, now that I fed residential that specific criteria, remember back on hot sheets where I was saying if reset criteria is grayed out, that indicates that you're not using any custom criteria. Why do you need to reset something that's already set to the default? Notice, if you will, now that I've fed Sandy Springs and Fulton County to that residential hot sheet, over to the right, we had customized before. That's how we can change our mind, alter the criteria. But now I have a reset link. Okay, so in the Market Watch widget, just by the virtue of the fact that reset is now a link, I know that I'm using custom criteria with my residential hot sheet. Now I'm not going to know what that is until I click customize to kind of go into that search screen and refresh my memory on what custom criteria I'm using. But if I go again down to land, notice that that reset link over here in the lower right corner is gone because I have not customized my criteria for my land Market Watch widget. Okay. Also, this widget has a refresh. So for instance, if I go back to residential and I go to today, right, I've got 2 price decreases, 4 pendings, 2 closeds, right? That's great. But let's just say that over the next hour or so, I'm going to be working in Matrix. Maybe in 45 minutes, I want to see if anything else has happened. I could come in here, click refresh, and see if those numbers change. So refresh is basically just reload that particular widget's data. It's a refresh, right? And conversely, the choice over in hot sheets would be set this to new only and then run it once more by clicking that hot sheet. And you would see what's only been new since the last time you ran the hot sheet. So they have a similar function in that regard. All right. So the last topic to really get to in this particular webinar, let me kind of pull these over to isolate it a little better, is the stats of Matrix. It's kind of built in to the system. So notice the My Stats widget. It says you have no stat links. Okay. So in this regard, we were using the widgets, Hot Sheets and Market Watch to drive that functionality. Okay, doing a hot sheet, doing a Market Watch search, those have to be done from the widgets. Stats is actually run from the Stats tab at the top of Matrix. So I'm going to go ahead and click into the Stats functionality here, and this is the screen that comes up. So similar to how I presented the hot sheets at the beginning of this video, let me give you some ideas on when you might use this stats functionality in Matrix. I'm going to give you two examples. One, for instance, I'm an NPR junkie. I'm always listening to the news radio, and so frequently on my drive in, I hear stories like industry leader CoreLogic predicts that home prices will rise 2.4% in the coming quarter. Things like that, right? And you all have probably Facebook pages for your business where you're sharing stories about the industry and funny little haha moments, and all these kinds of things. And it's all super good. It's all valid. It's all relevant. It's good to share that. But wouldn't you like to be the industry leader in your neck of the woods, specific to what your general client is interested in? Maybe you're advertising in certain magazines for certain clientele, right? And so you would like to customize that data and keep it local and become the local expert on what's happening in your market. Here's going to be a perfect example for you. One other thought on this, especially if we're coming up to the darker months of the year, right? October through January-ish, right? Not a lot of homes go on the market during the holidays. All right. Too much of a pain in the neck. People like to stay home. It's cold outside. They don't go out traveling if they don't have to. Right. So a lot of agents will say to me, I wish there was a way I could stay in front of my agents, even if I don't necessarily, in front of my clients, even if I don't have properties to talk about. Here's another perfect example. Okay. So enough talking about this with you just kind of looking at the screen with my mouse not moving and all that kind of stuff. So let's kind of give an example. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose, again, residential detached to start with the property type. And I always say keep this fairly vague, and I'll show you why in a few moments. So if I just put in Fulton County, let's just go with Fulton, if I can manage to spell Fulton. Okay. Fulton County, single family homes. Let's click historic sales by year over on the left. So with historic sales by year selected, I'll click generate in this little green capsule kind of area here. And now when I click generate, now I get a breakdown of historic sales by year from 2013 through last year, 2018. And if I hover over kind of where that peak is, I'll see that the peak actually was June in 2018 with 1,194 sales. Okay. Now, when I'm hovering over that peak and I see that little pop up and the number of sales in June of 2018, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Don't necessarily blame Matrix for that. Sometimes it's the browser, a plugin or something, but it should pop up when you hover over that crest or whatever data point it is that you're interested in. So if I go down to the blue at the bottom here, February of 2014, not a whole lot, right? There's pretty much the lowest of the low. If the chart isn't necessarily your jam and you want to look at the numbers, in the upper right corner we have 3 tabs. Search was where I put in Fulton County single family homes. Chart is where we're currently at, but if I click data in the upper right corner, here's where I actually see the numbers. Okay. Below the numbers, I have a link there that says export as CSV. You can click that, take that into numbers on a Mac or Excel on a PC, or you might have Excel on your Mac, whatever the case may be. You get the point. Take that into a kind of a word processing a database kind of thing there, right? You can kind of play with these numbers some more over there if you wanted to. All right. But remember, to the point of, becoming the local expert and sharing something that maybe your competitors in the market aren't necessarily coming up with themselves. Well, here's all you do. On this image, right click, save image as, boom, download it, post it to Facebook, post it to your blog, talk about whatever it is in your blog post that you want to talk about that this is relevant to, right? Boom, there you go. Come up with maybe 4 stats to run. Like if I go back to search, come up with 4 different types of stats to run. If there's, generally speaking, 4 weeks in a month, you now have a blog post for every week of the month talking about stats that nobody else is probably coming up with, right? So those are just, again, some more left foot, right foot, kind of, one foot in front of the other ideas on how you might use this. So over on the left, so we looked at search, chart, and data on the right. Now let's look at the left. So we have presets. Presets in this particular idiom, in this particular screen right here, really refers to the most popular searches, right? So historic sales by year, list price to square foot ratios. You've got some kind of popular ones, like I said, over here. But if we look at the center tab on the left at the top here, customize. If I go to customize, okay, time frame, previous year, year to date, etc. Let's look at year to date just real quickly. So if I do year to date and I click generate, look at this. Look at this little line here. We are tanking in this year. If I hover over that, I'm seeing August of 2019. Now, of course, I have no way of knowing when you're watching this video, but I'll tell you right now that August of 2019 is when I'm doing this. It's currently mid-month, okay? So the point I want to try to make here is anytime you're doing year-to-date or you're including the current month, don't panic if you see something here, because unless you're pretty much in that final week of the month or in the final few days, this particular graphic is going to be skewed. All right. So you might want to make it custom in your time frame and say, let's go January 2019 to July, the last month that we had a full amount of data. Right. Now our lines are more in play. Oh, this makes more sense. Right. We don't see that one taking a huge dive. Right. Oh gosh, market crash, sell. We're not in that kind of panic. Right. So again, that's always a thought when you're using your current month that you're in. Make sure you're toward the end of your current month. So our statistic right here, number of sales, is what we were looking at. Okay. Down below, I'm going to skip a few fields here real quick. Include prior years. If I uncheck that, if I only want to see the current year to date, that's how I could do that. Just uncheck that, show extra months. Okay. So now I'm looking at the number of sales as a smooth line for this year, only through July. Okay. So in this number of sales, if I click the down arrow, here's where I can find those other statistics I mentioned a few moments ago, right? Make 4 different types of graphs and then just have one ready to go each week of the month. You've got one for every month, one for every week of the month, and your blog is successful. You're constantly kind of pumping out some data, right? So let's look, for instance, at the complete days on market average. Let's look at our averages, and let's change from a line to, for instance, a column here. So I'm going to click generate now that I've chosen that. So now I see January through July at our days on market. So as we might expect, in the early winter months, we were up to almost 80 days on market, so 77 if I hover over that. Okay. And then in May was our lowest, right? The weather's getting warmer. People are out looking for homes. So we see kind of a natural trend downward during those summer months, right? Down below, we're grouping by month. We can also group by price or year. Okay. So I would honestly always keep your group by month, because watch, if I do by list price and generate, now, what the heck is this? What's going on? So what this is telling us is that $1 million homes or more are on the market a lot longer, right? So just kind of consider that when you group by something different. I'm going to go back to month here and click generate. Anytime you change any of this data to refresh your grid, you're going to click generate. All right, so just realize, when you click group by, it's really going to change what's going on. Below here, I have two links, advanced options and style options. Let's take a look at those real quick. Advanced options just means add a secondary statistic. So maybe I want to compare the days on market to, list price. I choose list price, I click generate, and so now what we can see is we see list prices, days on market is green, so we have up to 60. List price is blue. On the right side, we have our price. This is a very confusing chart because we're comparing days to dollar amounts. Instead, why don't we do sale price to list price, or original price average to sale price. Close price average. Okay, there we go. Right. So what we should see, I would imagine, is in winter we see a higher variance between, so in January people were asking for over 600, but they were closing for about 450, and then as I expected, in the summer months people are getting more of what they asked for because there's more buyers on the market, there's more competition, right? So if this is an interesting stat that you want to just right click save as, publish that. Okay, so again, advanced is just to add in a secondary statistic. All right, let's look at the other link down here, style options. So color palette, some of these can get really bright. So for instance, if I do sea green and click generate, there's a green look to it. Fill style, let's do, I like the light to dark choice. When I click that, now my grid becomes, or my chart becomes, a little more visually appealing. There's a little characteristic to it. Beyond that, let's make this a 3D chart style. So I'll click generate now. Oh, wait, these are generally higher than the back end. So let's actually flip that order by choosing back to front. Right, now we see that. If we want the values at the top, we can put those. It's a little crowded with that many columns. So I'm changing my mind. Let's take those values out. Okay. So you can just kind of make this, give it some style, right? And that's one more thing that I would mention. I think this might be the last one. If you're going to take my advice, perhaps, and, come up with 4 charts, one per week of the month, maybe the first week of every month, you talk about sale price to list price, right? If you like this green color, green for money, talking about prices, when we save this, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. When you save a particular chart, the style, the fact that these are columns, we've got that light to dark kind of glossiness to it. All of what you see here will be saved in the characteristics with your stats, so that way people who will frequently, hopefully, be coming back to your blog because you're the local expert in the houses that they're interested in the area that they live, they can quickly recognize, oh, it's a bar graph that's green. That means we're talking list price to sale price, right? Whereas, days on market, you might do something that's red, or, whatever stat you're interested in. Kind of branding it with a color, letting people kind of get used to how your blog looks, how your reports look based on what you're talking about, can help strengthen your brand. Okay. So anyway, on the Customize tab, those are your advanced options, style options. Also, notice down here, I've been really just clicking Generate so far, right? Because like I said, every time you make a choice to get that to reflect in your chart, in your data, you're going to click Generate to kind of rerun with whatever change you just made. You have a clear link there. I'm pretty sure that in 2019, watching a video on YouTube, you get the idea of what clear is going to do. If I click back to the search tab real quickly, clear is going to basically get rid of all of my graph choices. Okay, and again, also while we're looking at the search bar, or I'm sorry, the search tab up here, this map search lets me do a map search on any particular geographic area of Georgia. And also down here, additional fields, I can add additional fields. Maybe I'm interested only in homes with a basement or homes with some accessibility features, right? Maybe I'm catering to, people in wheelchairs. So I want to add ramps and elevators to my searches and things like that. What's happening with homes with an elevator, right? So I can do all that. Over in the lower left corner, back over on this left side of the screen, to the left of the clear tab, I have print or email. If you email these stats to a client, it will go into their client portal, just like the properties that you might send, a CMA presentation that you might send. So this is something that you can easily share with your clients. Lastly, if I click Save up there, this is called Historic Sales by Year, but I modified it over on the Customize tab, right? So the reason that Historic Sales by Year is in there is because that was the preset that I started with. But remember, what I did was I called this list price to sale price. I'll just do LP to SB. Okay. Fulton County, right? That was part of my other criteria. So I can click Save Search Criteria, which was my detached Fulton County, right? And now that I've decided to change or to save this with my criteria that I've entered, I also want to put this, for instance, on my home page, so I can click Save a Copy. Okay. So if I go back to the home page, now in the My Stats bar or My Stats widget, I've got that list price to sale price because, let's put it all together. Let's just say, I just ran it. It's around the first of the year. I'm sorry, the first of the month. I don't know where my brain is today. I apologize. But it's the first of the month, and this is when I do my list price to sale price. Well, let's just say 4 weeks from now, it's going to be the first of the month next month, and I'm ready to do my new list price to sale price post on my blog or share to Facebook. I can click that. Now it quickly comes up with this. I can click Generate, use the criteria saved with search. Yes, we're going to kind of refresh this. Now, it hasn't moved because, I just made this a couple minutes ago. So use your imagination to know that we would basically get another column here of August because August would be done, right? I could just kind of alter the search criteria, right? My time frame here, okay? So that's how you can do this. So when we started stats, we're just about done here. But the last thing I want to mention is, remember when we first came to stats, I said you want to kind of keep this open, right? So I'm choosing detached Fulton County. Okay, if I run this one more time, what I want to show you here real quickly is at the bottom, see how it says results calculated from approximately 14,000 listings. We have plenty of data in this display. If I go to data, there's no blank spots, right? There's enough data here to look at, okay? Because watch what happens if, for instance, I put in a subdivision. Let's go back to my historic sales by year. If I do a subdivision that I know of, what the heck does that chart mean? Look from March to April. Everything is blank here. I've got all sorts of different colors. This is so confusing. I have no idea what this means. Check this out. Down in yellow at the bottom, it says found just 53 listings, likely too few to chart meaningfully. Well, you're right. That's not meaningful at all, right? So just because, unless you've got a wildly popular subdivision that people are constantly moving in and out of. I do not recommend doing this by subdivision, because if I flip over to data, look how low those numbers are. Look at all those blank spots here, right? So the stats here, don't run it by subdivision, right? That's generally what we're kind of interested in. That's like a default zoom level in the real estate business. I understand that, but we don't really want to run with subdivision because most of the time there's just not enough activity and numbers to back up a subdivision search. Instead, if you know where that subdivision is, you might click map search instead and say, okay, well, this subdivision is over here somewhere. Let's just draw a radius around that subdivision. Let's go about a mile out. Okay, now if I'm in Cobb County with that just mile radius, now if I click generate, now I've got 2,097 listings. It's always going to show you kind of at the bottom. All of my lines are intact, right? It's a bit wonky. Year to year has been very different for that particular mile radius. But yeah, better than using a subdivision, maybe plot the center of that subdivision and go a half a mile out, go a full mile out. You can kind of play with it because, yeah, the more specific you are, the better, I would imagine. So maybe start with a half a mile. If you get enough, great. If not, just adjust that circle out to 1 mile instead, right? Kind of play with your circle. So that's pretty much it as far as what I wanted to show you today. So again, we kind of looked at the hot sheets, the Market Watch widgets. We customized those, including talking about the map. We performed those searches. We also talked, of course, about the fact that the button bar remains the same. So you can email, you can print, you can do whatever you'd like. Take some of those as comps into a CMA if you wanted to. Go into showing time and arrange showings for some of those actives that you found. All the standard options that you've got under a search screen, you have in your hot sheets and your Market Watch widgets. Stats, you saw how to kind of use that. Maybe some ideas on where you might use that data. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Don't forget, if you do have problems or questions, you can contact our customer service department at 404-255-8660, option 1. They're available Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, and Saturday, 9 to 5. Or you can watch the video again, or you can go into the knowledge base found on the FMLS member homepage. Just hover over support, go to knowledge base there. And as far as we were talking about today, of course, we were in Matrix. You can click into Matrix and find things on hot sheets, Market Watch, stats, all that kind of stuff. It's all written up right in here. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.